Well, it's evening now, and I shot a bunch of video, and I really had a hard time coming up with a coherent story with all that crap I shot. So I went home and I sort of messed around with it and realized that what I was trying to get to was something along these lines. Splitting firewood. For us mere mortals, the ones who don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend on splitters and fancy new saws and all that stuff. You know, just people. And my premise is, with what you're looking at right here, you can split and process an awful lot of firewood and do it for a reasonable amount of money. And that's a vehicle to haul it with. A good firewood saw, in this case it's my 350. You can have hobby saws like that John's Red 920 back there, but a good saw, and these three tools: split and maul, sledgehammer, and an axe. You can get fancy and get something like this. This is a fairly specialized splitting maul from Husqvarna, and I love this thing. It can go through a lot of wood in a hurry. Basically, the wood has to be the right kind of wood. You're not going to hammer through beech or some gnarly maple with it, but if it's got fairly straight grains like ash and cherry, sometimes I can actually get through a bunch of logs with this tool right here faster than I can with a splitter. You can really motor. I got a bunch of footage from today. I'll show some of that. This is an axe that unfortunately had my undivided attention for a whole bunch of years. I split a lot of wood with those kind of tools. Now I wear them out. I've gone through a bunch of axes, and I'm going to show you why in the video, but those three tools I think are a minimum. It's what you have to have along with a saw. Now this axe here, it's beat pretty bad, and it's because it was used as a wedge for a bunch of years. I'm going to put another wood handle on it. I happen to prefer the wood handle. They don't wear quite as well as the fiberglass, possibly. I mean, that's an argument, but they feel better. Now, when I do this handle, I'm going to have to grind off this kind of stuff because it'll pop off when I hit it with a sledgehammer and come back and hit me in the face. But I'm getting ahead of myself. There was the Yoda log right there. I'm going to go cut some wood up and start splitting it so I can get some more footage. Come on. A good vehicle like this little Subaru, a good saw, sledgehammer, an axe, and a splitting maul. That's really all you need. You can get a lot of wood done. You got those 5 things, you are now capable of producing firewood. Plus you have to have a place to get it. Now, having said that, a nicer saw or a nicer splitting maul can make life easier. And of course, when you get old like me, like I started earlier today in the video, a splitter sometimes is the only way to go. Now, for the tools. There's a lot of times when you can actually just get away with just a splitting maul. If the wood you're splitting is like ash or cherry and has relatively straight grain, you know, you can usually bust it apart with a maul. And so this is actually the lowest common denominator. But when you have hard maple that doesn't have straight grain, sometimes you have to use a combination of an axe because it has you know, much narrower. It has the angle here is much steeper, therefore it's easier for it to get into and penetrate into really hard and sometimes wet wood. but a combination of an axe and a sledgehammer can pretty much bash through the nastiest of situations. And then once the log is broke up, splitting maul, or even having to repeat the combination of axe and sledgehammer can get it done. This tool here, like an axe, has a very narrow cutting edge right through here, right where it goes from cutting edge into the hammerhead is very narrow. Man, you can just blast through ash and stuff like that because it's got some weight behind it. Believe it or not, half that pile was done with this tool. I just had run out of batteries. I thought I was videoing the thing. It was just exploding those logs. Now, you notice I don't have a wedge or Go Devil and all that stuff. I really find that stuff a waste of time. I mean, people use it, they work. But when you have an axe, yeah, you're going to wear it out. But you can control the log with a handle while you're using the sledgehammer to jam it through. I find that a lot more effective for me than using wedges. And concepts like this here, you know, I'm sure there's certain kinds of wood it works on. This one here has been used more for a sledgehammer than splitting wood. I would not spend my money on another one of these. Not really. And let me go find it. This poor axe here is what happens after it's had my undivided attention for a couple of years splitting wood. So this has got to be disposable. Now, I'm going to put a handle on that, grind the burred edges over and use it again. For the axes, the fiberglass handles, they last. I got a bird chasing me. No kidding. For the axes, I use these fiberglass handled ones from like a Walmart or a Tractor Supply. They don't really have to be that expensive because really what this is my wedge more than an axe. I do some splitting with it, but its main purpose in life is to get motivated through the wood with my sledgehammer. Now, back to the splitting maul. Most of these come with a really blunt edge, almost useless. I had to spend probably 20 minutes with a grinder to get this angle here to the point where this splitting maul was worthwhile. You grind that back and taper that back some and make the transition from cutting edge to the hammer not quite as severe, the angle not quite as steep. It gets to be more effective. But when I first got this tool, you know, it was probably a $25 tool. It was virtually useless. A little time with a grinder, it became useful. So anyway, now I'll try to piece together a video from some of the footage I did today, and I think I'm going to split some more wood because I need to get some more exercise. And I'm going to try to come up with a couple of conditions where you can see the benefit of having a tool like this. But anyway, to summarize, the vehicle to move the firewood, saw to block it up with, the 3 hand tools, the splitting maul, a sledgehammer, and an axe. That'll get you started. You can get an awful lot of firewood processed if you have those 5 things. Oh yeah, and a place to get the firewood. So anyway, on to the video. Now the Yoda log. I was on it before. Well, a lot of this stuff looks like it's pretty straight. And I think this guy right here, for example, might be a good one to show how this one works. So let me give a few shots and see if I get lucky. Well, that wasn't straight grain, but it did it anyway. I really like this split maul. Like I say, this one here, you can get through a lot of wood in a hurry. So that's what this does. Now I can get to the same place a lot of times with the other splitting maul. I just have to swing a little harder. But it's basically the shape of that head on that Husqvarna hand tool there, that splitting maul, that lets it go through this as quick as it does, as easily as it does. And this is soft maple, but still maple. Same deal with the low cost. Same deal with the low cost splitting maul. Well, maybe not. Try something a little bit less ambitious. Okay, this one here, it just bounced off of this. Now that's a perfect candidate for the axe and the sledgehammer. This guy here is not cutting it, no pun intended. This one here is an absolute waste of time. All it does is get you tired. But when you have those tougher situations, this combination here is pretty brutal. Again, because of the angle from the cutting edge back to the head, that's going to penetrate, just like that Husqvarna cutting wedge did. You can't see it from the camera, but I got moisture squeezing out. That's never good. But then you just go like this. Most of the way through. And that's what I mean by those three tools. You can get through some pretty gnarly stuff. You can see where it had that twisted grain right there. Perfect illustration. Now once a log like that's broken, this maul should be fine. It should break it apart. If it doesn't, well, we could use the axe and sledgehammer again just to see what it does. Well, I think that's a pretty good illustration right there. Why these three tools can get you through an awful lot of firewood, and also handle a lot of special conditions, from really tough logs to quickly going through logs that have a nice straight grain to them. Well, I think I'm going to close this introduction off and try to piece together a video from the other ones I did today. Damn, I love this thing. Takes about half as much energy to get through the same block of wood. What can you say? This one here, that's going to be a really tough log right here. I don't particularly want to get this one stuck in there. So I think that makes the point. Well, here goes nothing. I'm going to start out with what I would consider the healthiest of the saws. Cut this butt off right here and make it a little bit easier for the other saws. But anyway, my guess is this saw here is going to be probably by far the most capable saw in that whole lot. Just a guess. If it'll start. Of course, I don't know if I have gas either. I guess it has gas. do you think? What this is a 345 that got my Farmer Jones treatment. It has a 350 top end, so it's really not fair. It's not truly a 345 at all, but it's got a 350 top end. And if you looked at my prior videos, you know exactly what that saw is. But all the rest of these saws are in fact typical of what a person might get from Lowe's, or, you know, less than 250 bucks. Next one. This is Husqvarna's 440E. It's classified as a homeowner saw in the 40cc class. You know, it might be a 2 horsepower saw, maybe a little more. It has their easy start. It's kind of a spring assisted start, and it has the feature for a toolless bar and chain adjustment and change, so on and so forth. Basically, if you take that back off, it'll loosen up the cover here, and then you can tighten and loosen the chain with that wheel right there. Is it useful? I don't know. My wife likes this saw a lot. This one also has that Dolmar bar, and this one is exhibiting some of the characteristics where there's a lot of paint still in that groove. It's not bad, but it is binding up a little bit. But this is more order of magnitude I'm trying to look at here, not one saw versus the other. Now I'm going to guess between the 242 and the Stihl, I still think the 242 is going to have an edge, because it's a 40cc class saw, so is the 440. The 345 with a 350 top end, that's a 50cc saw, and the Stihl is only 31 cc's. And I'm sorry, I don't care how you look at it, it's just physics. You can't beat displacement, even though they're priced in the same kind of ballpark. A 40cc saw is going to outrun a 30cc saw every time. So anyway, even if it's a very old one, let's see if my premise is correct. And finally the little Stihl. Remember, this is only 31 cc's, and it's lighter than all the other saws there. This one is as it came out of somebody's garage. All my saws are usually a little bit better off than most of the average guys because I keep the chain sharp and the filters are clean and things like that. So please don't take this as a comparison of my 3 saws versus the little Stihl. Don't do that. I would say that the only comparison, if you're shopping saws, that you can come up with between those 2 saws or that cluster of saws, you'll never find a good 242, and if you did, you can't find parts for it. So both the 440 and the Stihl are a better choice than that saw. The 345 and the 350, as I've articulated in some of my other videos, they've got some systemic issues that you got to be very careful when you buy one of those. If you buy one used, they're noted for rattling off their mufflers and burning a hole in the plastic, which is their case. So the 440 and an MS 180 is still probably a safer buy than even a 345 or a 350, unless you're a hacker like me, and those are basically clutch head dream saws to play with. They're so easy to work on. When you break it down between the 440E and the Stihl, I don't know, the 440E is clearly a more powerful saw because it's got more displacement, but it's also a few dollars more expensive list price, even though you can get them for the same kind of money. The MS 180, it's been around in different forms for a very long time. It's a very mature saw. They're pretty rugged, pretty reliable, and they're pretty light. So you kind of have to set your own priorities. So that's just a time stamp on these different saws. That 440E is going to get used quite a bit by my wife. That 345 turned 350, it's going to be evaluated because if you watch some of my prior videos, there's a few things I tried out in that saw and I want to see how they last. That 242, that's going to go through an evolution. I'm going to actually work it over a little bit, work on the cylinder. And that Stihl there, that's going to go through an evolution as well. I think there's a lot more in that saw than what you just saw, no pun intended. And I intend to get more power out of that saw. So if you're interested in these little saws, stay tuned. I think Bob is going to do a saw college on that 242 series of saws. I've got another one over here. This is a 38cc saw. Even though it says 42 on the side, it's really a Husqvarna 238. And this is a ripping little saw. Maybe I should put a bar and chain on it. But this saw here is really not too far off a 350. But like I said before, these Husqvarnas like that are for enthusiasts. I would not recommend those 2 saws or anything from that class to anybody unless they're a bit of a enthusiast mechanic type. And if you are, they're a lot of fun. Five cheap saws. They all cut wood. And as a lot of people say, what's the best firewood saw out there? Well, it's the one with a sharp chain. On to splitting.